It's time to wet your whistle on the new Pacifica PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. It's more green, I guess, because it gets better fuel efficiency. You can plug it into your wall to charge it to go a certain distance on electric only. Let's get started on this masterpiece minivan. So I have new life goals. I plan on taking my Pacifica across the continental US for what I like to call CDP, Child Diversity Project. I'm going to have a new spawn in different areas of the country with different talent levels and skills. One might be an athlete, the other might be a stockbroker, the other one just might be a janitor, but I want a kid for every single function, and I can tell you this, I will be able to put all of them in here. I don't care if there's 20 of them, I will figure out a way to jam them in here, like I did Jack in the back of the hatch.
Hey Savage Geese and fellow goosers, if you're like me as a kid, you needed a Game Boy with Pokemon Blue to keep yourself busy in the backseat of a van. But now if you're a spoiled enough brat, you can have your full driving setup with PlayStation 4 in the backseat, and it'll fit behind the middle row. And if you're spoiled enough, you can even get your virtual reality setup back here and maybe even play while you're charging up because it's a plug-in hybrid. And the crazy part is you can even fit all this stuff in the back with all 7 seats up. That's how much room there is in this car. It's the best!
So when I loaded up Bernard, T-Bone, and Theodore into the back seats, little Ling Yu came up to me. She said, "Daddy, what's the Pacifica S?" I said, "Baby, hop in and I'll tell you all about it." It is an appearance package. It blacks out the grille, the Chrysler logos, you get black wheels, badging, and of course, you get a black interior with these S's on the seats. And I'll tell you why I like it. Because if your kids start to have a meatball fight, or they start slinging their own stool at you, if you had a light colored interior, chances of you cleaning that up are next to none. With this, I don't ever have to clean it, and that's a huge pro. All right, I've had a shut up back there! On the interior of this space, and I talked about this on the original Pacifica video, it is so comfortable in here. The interior space is so much better than what they used to do on the old TNC and the Grand Caravan that it's such a drastic improvement as it changed my opinion of the Chrysler minivan. And the only thing that I can say that is really negative is this stupid steering wheel design. They give you this real rich and meaty feeling thing, and then they put this kind of plastic or alloy thing in the center. So in the winter, when you turn on the heated steering wheel, you have this freezing cold piece of slab all over your hands that just fries my skin. And if I just put lotion on, I don't want to be dried out. So that's one thing. The second thing is there's too much shiny black plastic on the front half of this car, namely by all these controls that you use all the time. As much as it does look good when it's clean, I'm not digging it. I wish that they would turn it to a matte texture or something else. But other than that, the ergonomics, the knobs, buttons, and switches, everything that you use or need to use is excellent. The controls to open this ridiculously large panoramic roof are pretty intuitive. You have a sunglass holder, the typical mirror in the back so you can spy on those little creatures in the back, and then pretty much all your door controls. Everything is simple. If you've ever been in a van before, this is basic stuff. But the big thing is storage. Let's get into that. Take a look at all the nooks and crannies in here. There's not a place where you can't jam something in, and there's little pockets in the front for phones. There's a storage cubby that could put somebody's head in there. There's the door pockets that fit most bottles and whatever you want to put in here. Chances are, if you have difficulty storing something, you have too much crap. And I know when you have this thing loaded full of people, you're going to need as much space as possible. Luckily, with the Hybrid, You can still fold down the third row flat, so you have a huge cargo area. But the one negative part about having a battery pack in here is you lose the stow and go second row seats. And I found that is a huge trade-off already. Now, I put a ton of stuff in here just to test it without having those second seats removed, or obviously you can't put them in the floor. It still is an amazing space. So if you have to have the hybrid version, if you want the plug-in hybrid version, you know, just know what you're going to sacrifice by doing that. But everything else in here works the same way as it would on the traditional V6 that the other model has. The last thing to talk about is electronics. You have a couple different Uconnect options, which is the name of their infotainment, and bigger screen options. I feel like for the majority of people that are going to use this, it has everything you want. You have a Blu-ray player, so you can play movies in the back screens if you have the Uconnect theater. And I think if you have kids that are strapped in and you need to keep them tamed down, you have games like checkers, solitaire, which I don't know why kids would play solitaire, but you can play movies for them. It's all controlled here. You can lock out the HVAC controls in the back through the center screen. The only issue I really have with it is it's a little too slow. It is laggy, it is delayed. The input on the front screen and on the back screens is not as fast as it should be for the price of it. But it's something you get adjusted to, because overall, this is one of the best vans in terms of interior space and layout that you can get into. But let's finish that and cut right into some of the things you're going to learn about in the shop, which is not much, but I'll show you some of it.
America. Let's check if there's Chrysler. Dodge, Plymouth. Guess there's no Chrysler. Sorry, Pacifica. Let's see what we got under Ford. Oh look, a Raptor. Why should I play this in simulator when I could just play this in real life? Love reality, love my Ford Raptor, love the Chrysler Pacifica. A little bit of ascend into Cliche Corner and back to Savage Geese. Hello to everybody on Savage Geese. Oh man, this thing just rolls around everywhere. And with Cliche Corner out of the way, back to Savage Geese and the Chrysler Pacifica.
Welcome to the shop segment with the Pacifica plug-in hybrid. Now, since I've already covered the Pacifica, I'm not going to bore you with all the details. But one of the things that you're going to notice that has transformed the Pacifica from the old days of the town and country and the caravan is the use of underbody coverings. This carpeted composite material that runs all the way along the van. And you notice it immediately when you drive them back to back. This is far more quiet and refined, and a lot of the reason is they're able to isolate plenty of the road noise underneath from this. The front suspension is struts, but unlike many Chrysler FCA vehicles, you get an aluminum lower control arm, an aluminum knuckle, aluminum subframe carrier, and then a hydroform steel cradle for the engine. And when you look at the pinch welds and the pinch points and the underbody coating, this is vastly better than what you see on a lot of their other products. And it also transforms this. When you drive it, you can tell it just has this, it feels a lot more solid and substantial. Now, like what I talked about with Turbowski, they spent over $1 billion in development of this new platform, including retooling the Ontario, Canada plant to build it. Now with the hybrid version, you still get a V6, but you also get their dual motor hybrid system, including their eCVT, and they have their own branding for it. So you have two electric motors. One's capable of producing 84 horsepower and the other is like 114. Combined with the V6, it doesn't feel as fast as the traditional naturally aspirated V6, but you get a lot more torque with this, especially in certain conditions. When you peg the throttle, you get that electric feeling torque, and sometimes it can't even put the power down. It will spin the wheels, especially in a turn with traction control on. So if you like that instantaneous torque feeling, that's what this is about. And of course, you're getting better fuel efficiency. Now, the counterpoint is, let's be real about this. You know, you're adding complication with this. You still have an exhaust. You still have a traditional internal combustion engine, and then you're adding this lithium-ion battery pack in here as well. So you're putting everything together. But let's take a look at the back. Now, speaking of the hybrid system, tucked in the middle under this belly pan here is a 96 cell, 16 kilowatt battery pack, a lithium ion pack. And that is good for about 30-mile range, give or take, and depending on the conditions you drive in temperature-wise. So that is the most compelling part of this, because no other minivan is doing that. And if you're driving on short commutes, you could literally be in EV mode the whole time. That is one of the primary reasons I would buy this. Secondly, it's quieter. Obviously, you only have the electric motor whirring while you're driving. You do notice it, and I will say that. Now, of course, there are trade-offs, like I said, on the interior, and also the fact that you lose the towing capacity here of 3,500 pounds that you get with the traditional V6 model. But if you don't care about it, well, you don't. There's a twin blade independent rear suspension system, which you can see just looking at this subframe here. It kind of cuts off into two segments. You have a lower control arm, your main control arm here, which houses the coil spring on one end. The other side carries a trailing arm and a smaller lower control arm. You have your twin tube damper and a coil spring. The only part that's aluminum in the back, however, is the knuckle design. So basically, you know, the best part about this is you can tell this is that next generation FCA or Chrysler product. And when you start looking at the Challengers, Chargers, and all the other vehicles, you don't see the level of detail on those cars because they're sold, and you see it here. So this gives me a lot of hope that when they start moving into the newer platforms, a lot of their vehicles, SUVs or cars, hopefully, are gonna be a lot more refined like this is. All right, setting off in the Pacifica Hybrid. First thing I noticed is there's some weird delay or lag in the shifter selection. So you turn the knob, go to drive, it waits like a half a second before it shows you the gear. So you really got to get used to where it's at mentally and click. Hopefully they can fix that delay in future iterations. But let's set off. The first thing I noticed is basically if you haven't plugged this in, you haven't charged it, and you're not in pure EV mode, it will still start almost all the time and creep around in electric only mode, which is kind of nice. And I noticed this a lot, especially in the garage as I was shooting. I can roll it in and out without the gas motor ever starting up, which means I can close the garage door. I don't have the emissions. I don't have to worry about that. And it's also a lot quieter. Like if you're coming in late at night, you have that benefit. The other obvious thing that's great about the plug-in hybrid is there is a big difference in fuel economy. I've been rough on this and I get 24 miles to the gallon. Just kind of putting around like you probably would drive this, I'm getting 26.6 with this fuel tank or with this tank. And there is a big difference between the regular gasoline version and this. The trade-off is it's definitely not as quick. Now let's talk about drivability. This rides, it's so supple. It rides great in the front seats. Specifically in the front seats, you don't notice any jarring or any bumpiness. It doesn't have that tin can feeling that the old Caravan in Town and Country had. It's definitely one of the most refined van experiences you're gonna get, even in the back seats. It's so comfortable, it's wrong. Like literally, I said this on the interior part, I wouldn't mind sitting in the back seats or the third row at all on long trips. There's literally no sacrifice in doing so. Now, in terms of acceleration and power, this is one of the things, you know, the regular Pacifica has the same issue. Like if you drive it aggressively, you're always spinning the tires, and that's actually one of the funner parts of it. With the plug-in hybrid version, that instantaneous torque, I mean, basically if you ever nail it, you're gonna get wheel spin like just randomly when you floor it because there's so much torque from the electric motors. And I think it's really good in a lot of scenarios when you got to get out quick. You get that instant push. The only time it's a little slower is when you get off the line. Now, because they use a eCVT, let's just call it that, you don't have any gears, so you don't feel gear changes. It's really smooth, and it goes really well with what this is trying to be, is that like a fuel efficient, more refined feeling van. And I think most people that are going to drive this might actually prefer it to the V6 unless you want the power. Now, if you're looking to have a little bit more quietness, because this is still quiet even with this massive panoramic roof, I mean, basically the whole roof is glass. You strip that away and this gets even more quiet. So if you're somebody that favors like less road noise, get the lower trim level without the panoramic roof and you'll appreciate it. Now, I don't typically drive in traffic to do these types of videos, but this is how people are going to use it every day. It's a point A to point B appliance machine. It's a hauler, and it's surprisingly satisfying to operate. One of the big things that you can't really appreciate until you sit inside this is the level of visibility in here. This front glass in here is so immense that you see everything. You have such a command of the road, namely when you start getting out of some of these cars that keep shrinking the glass, lowering the roof line, where you feel claustrophobic. You get no sense of claustrophobia in here. And I think that's another part that you're gonna appreciate. The visibility is good. You don't have to overly rely on electronics. You can look out your mirrors and look out the side to see cars next to you. And that's a disappearing act in modern vehicles. I think that's another reason why I like driving this so much. Now, I'm gonna get into some of the greater details on the final thoughts about some of the nuances of the hybridization and some of the weirdness with it and kind of the counterpoint between the V6 and this. But as it stands, driving this is a real treat, and that's all. I'm gonna cut it off here. Let's get into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Pacifica Hybrid. Now, believe it or not, certain manufacturers have EVs or plug-in hybrids just to meet carb and cafe standards. And I feel like the Pacifica Hybrid is one of those experiments. But let's just go right into the pros and cons. The cons are this. Because you have a battery pack and it's in the floor, you lose the ability to fold down your second row of seats into the floor, which to me is kind of a deal breaker if I'm looking for a hauler. The second part is it's not nearly as quick as the V6 version, which, that might be a non-issue for some people. The next problem that I had, and I talked to Chrysler about this, is when you go in reverse and you're on any type of grade, any slight incline, it will roll forward in reverse. So if you have this, you got to make sure you cover the brake at all times when you're going in reverse. At least my tester had this issue. Now, combination of its weight, its low rolling resistance tires, it may roll more than other vehicles. And that's what Chrysler said. This is a normal thing for cars, which I've never experienced it to this level except in this hybrid. So check it out for yourself. But let's go on to the pros. In hybrid mode, it gets 6 to 7 miles per gallon better, pretty much in all conditions, than the gasoline version, and with a 30-mile range. Again, that is a huge pro. You may never even have to drive with a gasoline motor if you're on short trips. The next part is it's extremely quiet. Because most of the time you're in hybrid mode, it's going from EV back to the gasoline motor. It's very seamless, stupid smooth, and very quiet. You wouldn't think with all this glass in here that it would be as quiet as it is, but it's great. And when you compare it to the Caravan and the Town & Country it replaced, there is no comparison. This is amazing compared to that. From nose to tail, it's a better van. It's comfortable, it rides great, it handles well, it deals with every type of pavement situation without feeling like a straight up shitbox tin can. And the practicality of it, the doors, the sliding doors make it easier to get in and out. The power lift gate, the third row of seats fold in the floor. You can get in the back seats for real. Normal adults or big adults can sit back there. There's nothing that this thing can't do. It even has a slight towing rating. And I feel like if you just give yourself a chance to get in here and appreciate the visibility, the usability that you're gonna have with this over a traditional SUV, I mean, if you're a practical person, there's no way I would choose an SUV over this. That's how good it is. And they have the V6 option, which is quite quick. The only thing negative about these vehicles is they don't have an all-wheel drive option. So if you're in a really shitty climate, that might be an issue for you. But it's one of those, take it for a spin, check it out. This is one of the best vans on the market. If you're worried about the hybrid, just get a warranty. That's what I would do, or lease it, in the time being at least. Take care, I'll see you next video.
Savage geese. What a waste of skin. Man, we gotta get rid of this guy. I'm gonna show you how, but first, let's tune this Subaru. I think 60 PSI should be good.
Yeah.
Let's go!